Hi, and welcome to today's Daily Chronicle. Today is November 14th, 2024. Shaboozie's A Bar Song Tipsy hits another pop chart milestone. Shaboozie, seen here performing in Las Vegas on September 20, now holds the record for the longest running number one song on Billboard's Hot 100 charts in the 2020s. His bar song, Tipsy, has held the top spot on the singles chart for 17 weeks this year. Shaboozie's country pop crossover hit, A Bar Song Tipsy, has become the longest running chart topper of the decade so far. Having now spent 17 non-consecutive weeks atop the Billboard Hot 100, the song's run, starting this summer, has put it just 2 weeks shy of the all-time record. Elsewhere, in the Tom Tep songs by Tyler, the Creator, drop out and are replaced by one, an old song that's not quite ready to die, and two, yet another Tyler, the Creator song. Not surprisingly, the number one album in the country is once again by Tyler, the Creator. Last week, Tyler, the Creator's Chromacopia debuted at number one, even though the album had dropped on Monday instead of the normal Friday release day, giving it 3 fewer days to rack up the sales and streaming numbers that feed the album chart. This week, not surprisingly, the album once again sits comfortably atop the Billboard 200. In spite of the modest decline in streaming and larger drop in sales, that's to be expected, given that the most fans who pay for music still only do so once. After Chromacopia, though, things get a little more chaotic. Sabrina Carpenter's Short and Sweet takes up a spot from number 3 to number 2 and is followed by two widely different chart debuts. Rapper Lil Uzi Vert bows at number 3 with Eternal Take 2, while veteran rock band The Cure posts its highest charting album since 1992. As Songs of a Last World debuts at number 4. The latter record seems especially vulnerable to a steep drop next week. However, with sales accounting for a whopping 92% of its chart performance, if Songs of a Lost World does take a plunge in the weeks to come, it'll follow a pattern that's become typical. And for a sense of what to expect, you needn't look further than an album that made a lofty debut last week. The Great Impersonator, by the pop song singer Ryder Halsey, debuted at number 2 last week. In performance fueled largely by album sales, as well as the usual assortment of fan-focused online discounts and variant editions that often boost albums in their first week of release. This week, the plummets all the way to number 179. Elsewhere, Gracie Abrams' The Secret of Us continues to ride two simultaneous waves. The release of the deluxe edition a few weeks back, and her ongoing placement as opening act on Taylor Swift's Eras Tour, as the album climbs from number 7 to number 5, and Chappell Roan's The Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess gets a nice boost from the singer's high-profile stop at Saturday Night Live on November 2nd, and she surges from number 12 to number 6. Rounding out the top 10, Billie Eilish's Hit Me Hard and Soft climbs from number 9 to number 7. Rod Wave's Last Lap slips from number 5 to number 8. Swift's The Tortured Poet Department edges up 2 spots to number 9. And Morgan Wallen's One Thing at a Time rises from number 10 to number 8. And 3 other albums join Halsey's The Great Impersonator in dropping out the top 10. Kelsey Ballerina's Patterns, which debuted at number 4 last week and now sits at number 54. Eminem's The Death of Slim Shady, which leapt from number 44 to number 6 last week, on the strength of vinyl sales, now skids to number 57, and Glorilla's Glorious, which experiences the most modest decline as it dips from number 10 to number 11. Top songs. Shaboozie's A Bar Song Tipsy has now sat at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for an astounding 17 non-consecutive weeks. And this week officially surpasses Wallen's Last Night to stand alone on the longest running chart topper for the decade so far. That 17-week run is the best ever for a song with no featured guest artists. If you want to get more granular about it, it's the longest run of all time for any song that is not 2019's Old Town Road, featuring Billy Ray Cyrus by Lil Nas X. Given that A Bar Song Tipsy rattled around in the top 4 months before hitting number 1, and that it sat at number 2 during the 2 different one-week interruptions of its run to the top. It's a remarkable feat. As noted a few weeks ago, A Bar Song Tipsy stands a decent chance of tying Old Town Road, which was number 1 for 19 weeks. But it faces an insurmountable obstacle as the holidays draw closer. If last year's charts are any indication, we're 2 weeks out, give or take, from the turn of the prevailing holiday standards. Mariah Carey, All I Want for Christmas Is You. Brenda Lee's Rocking Around the Christmas Tree and Their Ilk, and 3 weeks out from this said standards, locking down the top spots on the Billboard Hot 100. So, for 2024 at least, Shaboozie looks reasonably well positioned for a tie, at least until January rolls around. For those who love to see records broken, you won't likely need too much patience, even if Shaboozie falls short. The advent for digital streaming, and to be more specific, digital streaming algorithms that keep feeding users music they've already heard, has made ever longer charts run commonplace. It's not that Old Town Road and A Bar Song Tipsy are actually more popular than past chart dominators like, say, the Beatles, Hey Jude, or Olivia Newton's Physical. It's just that, as so many systems, there's even more machinery in place to keep songs at the top once they lay there. While we're at the top of logjams, Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars, Die With a Smile, Billie Eilish's Birds of a Feather, and Sabrina Carpenter's Espresso still holds numbers 2 to 4. Respectively, Teddy Swim's Lost Control actually appears to be gaining steam in its 43rd week in the top 10. It climbs from number 6 to number 5, marking its first week in the top 5 since late April. Post Malone's I Had Some Help, which features Wallen, drops from number 5 to number 6, while Copperton's Taste climbs from number 9 to number 7. Benson Boone's Beautiful Things, which has proven almost as difficult to dislodge from the charts as Lose Control, returns to the top 10, climbing from number 11 to number 8. Wallen's Love Somebody, which momentarily knocked A Bar Song out of the top spot a few weeks back, slips from number 8 to number 9. Finally, 2 songs from Tyler, The Creator's Chromacopia, drop out of the top 10 after last week's big surge. Saint Chroma, featuring Daniel Caesar, and Noid slip from number 7 to number 10 to number 14 to number 37, respectively. Landing at number 10 to take their place, Sticky, by none other than Tyler, the Creator, from the track, which features Glorilla, Sexy Red, and Lil Wayne, climbs from number 14 to number 10, and looks poised for a decent run given the track replaces Saint Chroma atop this week's streaming charts. Worth noting, last week's Billboard charts contained a small holiday boomlet for Halloween titles, as songs like Thriller, Ghostbusters, and Monster Mash all surged, however momentarily, into the top 40. This week, they've all disappeared from the charts, as anticipated. As noted above, though, a far greater holiday music surge looms, and it's already starting to make its presence felt on the Billboard 200 album art chart. Though radio stations haven't yet tipped into holiday programming, and the Hot 100 singles chart before the remains blessedly free of Brenda Lee's Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree, listeners' early out on the gate holiday streaming habits are beginning to make themselves seen on the charts. This week, 5 holiday-specific albums enter, or in most cases re-enter, the Billboard 200. Michael Bublé's 2011 release Christmas at number 72, Jimmy Fallon's brand new guest-packed holiday seasoning at number 84, Mariah Carey's 1994 classic Merry Christmas at 93, Bing Crosby's Ultimate Christmas at number 150, and tradition since 1965, the Vince Guaraldi's trio, A Charlie Brown Christmas, at number 170. Consider those 5 albums the tip of exceedingly cheerful iceberg as Thanksgiving approaches and a nation turns its lonely eyes to world eyes. The questions worth considering in this moment of relative calm are: 1. Will any holiday standard surpass Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You? On the top of the charts as Rocking Around the Christmas Tree did for several weeks last year. And 2, will any of the contemporary artists vying to land a song in the Christmas canon, Kelly Clarkson, Ariana Grande, Sabrina Carpenter, make headway against the Andy Williamses and Bobby Helmses of the world? A methane pollution fee on oil and gas faces a cloudy future under Trump. The flare burns natural gas at an oil well in Watford City, North Dakota in 2021. Oil and natural gas companies would have to pay a fee for methane emissions that exceed certain levels under a new rule announced by the Environmental Protection Agency Tuesday. Oil and gas companies would have to pay a fee for releasing climate warming methane into the atmosphere under the new regulations from the Environmental Protection Agency. But it is likely the incoming Trump administration and Republicans in Congress will try to weaken or eliminate the fees. Methane is the main component of natural gas. And it is also produced when extracting crude oil. Methane is among the greenhouse gases heating the planet, and it is 80 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Scientific studies show the oil and gas industry releases about 3 times more methane than EPA estimates have shown. Methane leaks happen across the oil and gas production system, from drilling to transporting the fossil fuels. Sometimes the methane is released intentionally. EPA has been engaging with industry, states, and communities to reduce methane emissions so that natural gas ultimately makes it to consumers as usable fuel, instead as a harmful greenhouse gas, Michael Regan, EPA administrator, said in a statement. The fees are laid out in President Biden's signature climate law, the Inflation Reduction Act. The EPA says they apply only to waste emissions from high-emitting oil and gas facilities, which means those under allowed limits do not have to pay fees. Violators would have to pay $900 a metric ton for anything released above the allowed limit. In 2 years, the fee would increase to $1,500 a metric ton. The agency estimates the new fees will reduce methane emissions by 1.2 million metric tons through 2035, the equivalent of taking nearly 8 million gas-powered cars off the road for a year. The EPA says the fees are designed to work in tandem with rules finalized last year that reduce methane pollution from oil and gas operations. Republican-led states and industry groups already are challenging those regulations in court. The Supreme Court recently declined to request to block them from taking effect. But under President-elect Trump, the future of the rules are in doubt. And the oil industry says it will work to make sure that they are changed or even eliminated. This is the wrong approach on methane policy making, Mike Sommers with the American Petroleum Institute said in a call with reporters. We look forward to working with the new administration and Congress on repealing the regulation as quickly as possible. Some in the industry dubbed the fees a methane tax and vowed to eliminate them. The tax will lead to less energy security and higher energy prices for American families and businesses. Ann Bradbury, CEO of the American Exploration and Production Council, said, calling on the Trump administration and Congress to repeal this punitive tax on American energy. While the fees may increase industry costs, the prices consumers pay are set by markets that include many more factors in addition to regulatory costs. The Trump campaign did not respond to NPR's request for comment on the fees. One option for changing the methane fee regulation might be the Congressional Review Act, which allows Congress to overturn certain federal agency actions. It's also likely the fees will face a legal challenge from states and industry groups who allege the EPA is overstepping its authority. Environmental groups praise the Biden administration for the new fees. It's heartening to see the effort to make polluters pay for the leakage of the super climate pollutant methane, Maggie Coulter with the Center of Biological Diversity said. Ultimately, we know that curbing the climate emergency requires moving quickly away from fossil fuel extraction. The fees come as the Biden administration convened a summit with China at the United Nations annual climate meeting, COP29, in Azerbaijan to reduce methane emissions and other climate pollutants globally. This is the follow-up to the Global Methane Pledge, launched last year at COP28, when more than 150 countries pledged to reduce methane pollution by at least 30% by the end of the decade. The American people value clean air and healthy communities. Christina Docini with the World Resources Institute wrote in a statement. If Donald Trump attempts to rescind the rule when he takes office, he would be putting Americans at risk. University of Rochester investigates wanted posters accusing staff of Gaza war crimes. The University of Rochester is investigating the origin of hundreds of wanted posters that appeared across its campus over the weekend, which accused some members of the university community of contributing to ethnic cleansing in Gaza. Charges made on the posters include allegations of misuse of power, intimidation, and racism. The incident comes as the war in Gaza rages on, and Americans, notably across college campuses, have been split on the United States' continued support of Israel throughout the bloody conflict. This act is disturbing, divisive, and intimidating that runs counter to our values as a university. University President Sarah Mangelsdorf said in a statement, furthermore, Several of those depicted appear to have been targeted because they are members of our Jewish community, Mangelsdorf said. We view this as anti-Semitism, which will not be tolerated at our university. This isn't who we are. This goes against everything we stand for, and we have an obligation to reject it. The university said it was working to remove the posters, but the process was extensive because of the strong adhesive used. The school's Department of Public Safety said it was investigating the incident as vandalism. Since October 7th, 2023, Hamas attack in southern Israel last year, in which more than 1,200 people were killed, Israel's military response has killed more than 43,000 Palestinians, according to local health authorities. More than half of the dead in Gaza are women and children. Israel says it targets Hamas militants who hide among civilians. The resulting humanitarian crisis in Gaza has sparked international outrage. But despite Israel resisting calls to allow more humanitarian aid into Gaza, this week the United States said it will not reduce its military support for Israel. The University of Rochester Hillel chapter, which represents Jewish students, condemned the posters, but said the flyers did not appear to target students, nor was there any known threat to students. These deeply disturbing posters, which disproportionately singled out Jewish faculty and staff, spread harmful anti-Semitic ideas about Jewish faculty and staff, about the Jewish people and about Israel. A statement from the group said, They further the spread of anti-Semitic hate on our campus in an attempt to sow fear, as has been the case with the conflict itself. Responses across the university have been split about the poster's appearance. In a statement issued to NBC Rochester affiliate WHEC-TV, the university's Jewish Voice for Peace chapter said it was hasty for the school to immediately assume the posters were born of anti-Semitism. These posters highlighted Jewish and non-Jewish administrators and professors and explicitly condemned their support for the Israel military and government, the group said. The University of Rochester has ties to $7.8 million in Israel-related investments through its long-term investment pool, the school's Ethical Investment Advisory Committee reported in February. Protesters across college campuses have called for their schools to divest from Israel, saying financial entanglements make the school complicit in the conflict. Anti-Semitism is bigotry or hatred against Jewish people on the basis of their identity, and we unequivocally oppose it and work to dismantle it, along with all forms of oppression. Jewish Voice for Peace said, It is not, however, anti-Semitic to criticize the Israeli government and military that is committing war crimes. I was shocked. Lawmakers react to Gatz's pick to be Trump's attorney general. Representative Matt Gaetz questions Attorney General Merrick Garland during a hearing by the House Judiciary Committee. On June 4th, President-elect Trump announced his intent to nominate Gaetz to head up the Department of Justice Wednesday. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill reacted to the news that President-elect Trump intends to nominate Representative Matt Gaetz, Republican from Florida, to be Attorney General with a mix of support, disbelief, and silence Wednesday. Senator Susan Collins, Republican from Maine, said she was shocked to hear Gaetz was tapped to lead the Department of Justice. Obviously, the president has the right to nominate whomever he wishes. Collins says, but this is why the Senate advice and consent process is so important. I'm sure that there will be many, many questions raised at Mr. Gatz's hearing, if in fact the nomination goes forward. If confirmed, Gatz 42 would take the helm of the department that as recently last year was investigated him for possible sex trafficking offenses. Ultimately, prosecutors recommended against bringing charges against him after a long-running probe. Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski told reporters in the Capitol that she is concerned about the number of open investigations surrounding Gatz. I'm surprised by this particular nomination, and perhaps some of the other which, again, were not names that most of us would have thought to be out there, Murkowski said. But President Trump, if he is not one thing, he is his own person and advancing his ideas. Republican Senator Johnny Ernest, Republican from Iowa, did not indicate her thoughts on the nominee, but said that he'll have his work cut out for him. Republicans will hold 53 seats in the upcoming Congress after last week's elections, meaning Gatz can only lose 3 votes from his own party if he hopes to be confirmed. A rank-and-file Republican in the House of Representatives speculated on his odds bluntly. It's an obvious throwaway nomination that has no chance in the Senate. But the skepticism is also nuanced. Fellow Trump ally Senator Lindsey Graham, RSC, said he is inclined to support Trump's cabinet picks, but admitted some surprise by Gatz's nomination. Confirmation hearings will be important. Gatz will have some tough questions to answer, Graham predicted. Florida Senator Marco Rubio, who Trump has tapped to serve as Secretary of State, said he has known Matt a long time and thinks he would do a good job. Rubio added he expects Gatz would be confirmed. Presidents deserve great deference. As president, he has a mandate and he has a right to surround himself with people he trusts, especially in a position that important, he said. Gatz also faces ongoing House Ethics Committee investigation related to sex trafficking and drug allegations. That investigation would end if Gatz resigned from the House to serve as Attorney General. Trump met Biden in the Oval Office today. It's a tradition Trump skipped in 2020. Former and future President Donald Trump visited his old office today, the Oval Office. President Biden invited his predecessor and successor for what is a ceremonial tradition meant to signal the desire for a smooth and peaceful transfer of power. In a very brief photo op at the beginning of the meeting, the leaders shook hands and Biden congratulated Trump and said he looked forward to a smooth transition. Trump said, "It will be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that, Joe. Politics is tough, and in many cases it's not a nice world, but it is a nice world today," Trump said. First Lady Jill Biden was there to greet Trump on his arrival. The White House told reporters, giving him a handwritten letter from Melania Trump, who did not attend. Trump took part in this tradition in 2016, but skipped it in 2020. In 2020, Trump refused to accept the results of the election and did not invite Biden to the Oval Office. But in 2016, then President Barack Obama sat next to Trump in the Oval Office, just 2 days after Trump beat Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton. Sitting side by side, Trump called Obama a very good man, said it was an honor to meet with him, and expressed surprise that the conversation had lasted more than an hour. The one piece of advice Obama gave Trump while reporters were in the room was, don't answer the questions when they just start yelling it. That's something Trump immediately ignored when in office. He frequently held court as reporters shouted questions, responding to the ones he felt like answering, and sometimes sparring with the journalists. But on Wednesday, both Trump and Biden ignored reporters' questions. The tradition is part of the transfer of power. If the Trump-Obama relationship was strained, the one between Biden and Trump is even worse. Biden campaigned against Trump twice, winning in 2020 with an argument that Trump was an existential threat to U.S. democracy. Then, during the 2024 campaign, their one meeting on the debate stage in late June essentially ended Biden's bid for a second term. During the remaining months of the campaign, Trump often gloated about his knockout punch in the debate and bemoaned the coup that forced Biden out of the race. But the day after the election, Biden phoned Trump to congratulate him and invite him to the White House for a meeting. I assured him that I would direct my entire administration to work with his team to ensure a peaceful and orderly transition. Biden told staff and members of his cabinet gathered in the Rose Garden last week, that's what the American people deserve.